Hey, Happy New Year to you. I hope that you are already having a great new year, but even if it's already started off a little bit rough, don't worry about it. You've got a lot of time between now and December 31st to have a lot of good things happen. I know the last couple of years have been pretty difficult. Let's face it, 2020, man, it sucked. I'm sorry. It was a dumpster fire. And we get to the end of 2020 and we stand there about a year ago screaming for 2021 to come on. This was going to be our year. And for a lot of people, 2021 was just another dumpster fire, except for it was a dumpster fire in the middle of a gas station where you had to pay twice as much for the gas. So here's hoping 2022 is going to be a lot better. We're not going to announce anything. We're just going to kind of sneak into 2022. In fact, I encourage you to set your expectations really low for 2022. Let's just decide that anything short of a meteor strike is a good year. Set your expectations low for everything except for your health. And that's what this is all about. I started thinking about this and dreaming about this during the early stages of the pandemic. You remember 15 days to slow the spread. Those 15 days are like 2 years now. Well, in the midst of all that, I started doing some posts on social media, some video posts, just trying to encourage people. I knew a lot of people were struggling and hurting, but then I started thinking about doing something bigger and better, something a little bit more lasting. And let's face it, health is a huge, huge issue in our country today. A lot of people struggle with their health. We always think of this time of the year for a time of resolutions. A few years ago, a show came out that I used to love to watch. It was called The Biggest Loser, and it always premiered right about this time of the year, sometimes on January 1st, just to get you kicked off with your New Year's resolutions. And I like the show. Certainly in the early seasons, it was definitely interesting and somewhat entertaining. They would gather some of the most unhealthy people from all around this country and place them on a campus, assign a trainer to them. You remember some of those early trainers, Bob and Jillian, and they'd scream at them and yell at them and get them in shape in a few weeks. But in the early shows, especially on the first night, the season premiere, they always would get them with a doctor. And that doctor and his team would do an evaluation of that individual competitor, and not only just their weight, but they would check their blood pressure and blood sugar and all these different things, a lot of blood tests, x-rays sometimes, heart tests, and then they would tell them what their true age was. And that was always an interesting reveal, because they'd sit down with Jim Bob and say, "Hey, Jim Bob, I know you're 35 years old, but your body tells us that you're more like 73. And then they'd have Mary, and Mary would be 38. And they say, "Mary, you're 38, but metabolically you're more like 60. And then they'd always have that big surprise. They'd have the one guy that, "Hey, buddy, I know your birth certificate says you're 33, but dude, you're like 90. You need to fix yourself quick." And they would get scared and they would cry. And then they say, "Okay, let's go work out." And that first workout was always the barf bucket workout. They would get them into a room full of weights or outside doing some kind of thing, flipping tires or whatever. And invariably it ended up with many people throwing up, some people passing out. And as soon as they came back around, they'd give them something to drink and say, "Get back to work." And it was really kind of a motivational thing. Motivational because they were doing it and I was watching it while I was sitting on the couch eating a piece of pizza. But still, it was fun to watch and to see the transformation over the course of several weeks. And then they get to the very end, the contestants, the ones that remained, many had been voted off or eliminated because they weren't losing enough weight for the competition. But then they get to the finale night and they'd have the big reveal where these people would come back and you would have the top 2 or 3 contestants and they would spend an hour talking about them and their fitness journey, and then they would weigh them, that final weigh-in, and whoever had lost the highest percentage of weight over the course of those several weeks would win, and they would be declared the biggest loser. I think they won like $250,000, which was nice. And then you thought, man, they've just changed their lives and got paid for it. But some things began to happen as the years went on, and they were pretty honest with it on the show. They talked about that season 1 winner. If I remember correctly, he came in weighing right at 300 pounds. And by the time they got to finale night, he was closer to 200 pounds, an incredible weight loss. But then a few months after he had won, after the cameras were turned off and another season had started, they began to follow up with him. And now he not only gained back that 100 pounds he lost, but he gained an additional 30 pounds. So he was already at a higher weight than when he started the show. So two things happened right near the end of the run of Biggest Loser. I think it ran for 17 seasons, but two things happened that really kind of brought the show to a screeching halt. The first thing was in season 15. A young lady came on there weighing 260 pounds, and she fought hard all throughout the competition. And when they finally sent them home to do their last little bit of weight loss, she came back on finale night, and she no longer weighed 260 pounds. She weighed 105. That took her down to a BMI, a body mass index of 18. In many, many organizations, they will not allow a runway model to walk the runway with a BMI less than 18.5. So needless to say, she was tiny and didn't look all that healthy, and a lot of speculation went around the internet, of course. But the priceless thing that day, if you ever get a chance, go back and find the video of Bob and Jillian, the trainers. They looked at each other with their mouths hanging open, just in total shock. Not in a shock of awe of, wow, she looks great, but what have we done? You see, the show quickly became where people would do all they could just to lose that last bit of weight, even starving themselves for the last 2 or 3 days prior to the finale night to have the lowest possible percentage, or the highest possible percentage of weight loss, the lowest possible weight. Not healthy, not lasting. The other thing that took place, and this was not because of the show, but it was something that brought to light a lot of perspective. Bob, one of the trainers, seemingly one of the most healthiest guys out there, one of the top trainers in the country, had a heart attack in a gym while he was working out. Unfortunately, he survived. He had to change a lot of things in his lifestyle, and now he sells, I think, meal plans or something. The guy is fortunately doing well, but he had to adjust. And that kind of brought to life, hey, if Bob, a guy who looks so healthy and seems so healthy and leads others to be healthy, if he goes through that kind of health crisis, then what could happen to me? Well, a lot of things. And we're going to be talking about those kind of things too over the course of this. Listen, 2021 wasn't the healthiest year for me, and it wasn't a weight loss issue. Again, for a later date. But for now, I want you to get excited about what the next 52 weeks could bring to your life. Imagine, if you will, close your eyes if you need to, and think about what it could be like on New Year's Eve at the end of 2022, looking at another year ahead of you, and to be so much healthier than you are now. Whatever reason you came to this video channel for, we want to address it. And I think we have to look not just at one thing like weight. I think you have to look at the entire body and the entire mind, the entire spirit. I think all those things contribute to a healthy year. So this is my goal for you for this year, just as it is for me. We're going to start on January 1st or 2nd or 3rd, whenever you actually watch this video, wherever you pick it up. I don't care if you start in July, but we're focusing on how much change we can make between now and December the 31st of 2022. We're not worried about what we can do between now and the end of this week or now and the end of the month. We're looking at the long picture, because that is the approach that has been proven to work time and time again. If you have a notebook, if you don't have a notebook, get a notebook. But if you have a notebook, I want you to write some things down. You may have to go back and watch this again. But I want you to start thinking about the things that you want to accomplish this year. What is your goal? What's the thing that you want to see change between now and December 31st? Thing or things. If it's weight, write down your weight. If it's to get more physically fit, if you're looking for more muscle tone, if you're looking just for more stamina, if you're looking just to get off the couch, if you work in a sedentary job where you are stuck at the same desk and the same chair for hours and hours on end, then obviously you've got to get moving. That can be a goal. That's good. But I need you to start charting where you're at right now. I'm not really planning anything for you this week beyond evaluating. And evaluation is a great tool. When I sit down and work with people, a lot of times it's young couples who are struggling financially. And the first thing I have them do before we come up with any great master plan is go back and see where you're spending your money. Every single dime. Chart that for a period of time, and then let's look at your budget and see what we can fix. For you, it's going to be something different. Now, if you're struggling financially and that's putting stress on you, and that stress is turning into unhealthy habits, then maybe you also need to chart your finances. But what I want you to do is chart everything you eat for the next week. I mean everything. You're not going to share it with anybody. This is a time for you to be honest. A couple years ago, and I'm going to tell you more about this later, but I started working with a group of recovering addicts. And it's been an amazing, amazing journey as I try and help them through some of their struggles. But one thing that we agreed on very early was that silence and shame will kill any progress. So now's the time to give yourself a break. Wherever you're at, if you're embarrassed about your weight, that's okay. I still want you to write it down this week. If you're embarrassed about your eating habits, if you're going to the Mexican restaurant, if you're at Taco Bell so much they know you by name when you pull in the drive-thru, that's something you might want to write down. I want you to list all these things, all your unhealthy habits. If you're drinking too much, listen, it happens. Some people start with a glass of wine and maybe they just have one glass of wine a night, but the glass is like this big. So I want you to list that. I want you to be honest. I'm never going to ask you to share this with me or anybody else. But I want you to write this down and get honest with yourself. And don't let it beat you up. This is just a fair evaluation of where you're at. Then the next thing I want you to do is write down what your goal is for 2022. Realistic goals. Like I said, if it's weight loss or if it's more stamina or if it's just healthier habits, reducing stress, getting more sleep. That can be a negative and a positive. You may not be getting enough sleep. That's something you need to write down in your habits section right now, your bad habits section. But if your goal is to get more sleep, then put that down. I want you to take a real honest evaluation for 1 week. It might be a little painful, but don't let it cause you stress. This is how you start getting more fit. Once you've written those things down, I want you to look backwards for just a little bit. I'm not asking you to make excuses, but I am asking you to help explain things to yourself. What things in the past have kept you from accomplishing the goals that you hope to accomplish this year? And what things in the past have contributed to your bad habits? There could have been a trauma in your life, and from that trauma you started an unhealthy habit. It's okay to write that down. There could be an injury that took place. There could be just a period of time where you were struggling so much trying to keep up with your work or family or whatever it was that you just stopped eating healthy. So go ahead and list those things. That could be a big list, and I just want you to be honest. Now, the only other thing that you might want to get, you probably have one on your cell phone. You can get an app, a pedometer, a step counter. If you don't have one on your phone, if you don't have access to an app, pedometers you can buy from any retailer, and you can get them as cheap as $6 or $7. You can get them all the way up to $100, I think. The $100 ones are really fancy, and unless you just need to spend money on something like that, I wouldn't recommend it. The cheaper ones, the $7 ones, they're pretty okay and fairly accurate. The great thing about those is if you have a lazy week, you can throw them into the dryer and turn it on a cool cycle and run it, and you get a lot of extra steps and feel good about yourself. I don't recommend that. I'm just saying people do it. But I want you to try and have a way to gauge your movement. If you don't have access to either one of those, you can just maybe measure out a walking path. You can drive it this week and figure out how far you would like to be able to walk. Figure out what a mile is from your house. I'm not saying we're going to start off at a mile. I'm saying just know how far a mile is from your house. You may have to go up and down your street 5 times if you don't want to go out of your neighborhood. But start to lay those things out. This is the week to prepare for the journey that we've already begun, but that we really kick off into next week. I hope that this is something that you are excited about. This should not end up being one of those things that by February 14th you're done with. That's why we're pacing ourselves. If you feel the need to do something this week, to feel like you've accomplished something beyond all those things I asked you to list, try and move a little bit more than you did last week. If you were sedentary all week last week, vacation, watching TV, whatever, eating like crazy over the holidays, do something a little bit healthier this week, a little bit healthier eating, a little bit more movement, but don't feel like you've got to jump into the journey too far yet. We're going to deal with that in the weeks to come. We're going to do it in a very well-paced way. I look forward to taking this journey with you. If this is something that you think your friends would be interested in, please do me a favor, share this link with them. And then also, if you would, hit the subscribe button. I appreciate it. I want to know how this is helping you We didn't do a whole lot today. Again, this is evaluation time. Next week we start getting into things. We're going to have some guests over the next several weeks. Anything that I can do to try and help you, and feel free to leave me a message in the comments, and I'll do all I can to try and address any needs that you might have. Happy New Year. This is going to be a good year. Again, as long as there's no meteor strikes, it's going to be a good year. Remember that. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.